In one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America, Chileans are more affluent than at any time in their history. That the more socialistic governments of the early 21st century have reaffirmed the free market reforms of the 1970s and 80s would seem to be a second economic miracle. These shoppers live in a society of single-digit inflation and relatively low unemployment. Chile has one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America. Record housing starts reflect a solid middle class, and the quality of life in suburban neighborhoods like this one rivals that of North America or Europe. Chile is one of the world's major exporters of fruits and vegetables, especially during the Northern Hemisphere's winter months. Today, Chile is the second largest exporter of fresh salmon in the world. And its award-winning wine industry has become an international success. There are hundreds of bodegas or wineries in Chile. Here in the lush Colchagua Valley, south of Santiago, are the highly profitable vineyards of the Montes winery. Locally, Montes employs more than 300 people. Alfredo Vidure is one of 4 partners.
What we put ourselves as a goal was to produce very high premium and ultra premium wines. What we want is to have concentrated tastes and concentrated flavors. So when there's too many bunches per vine, we cut about 40 to 50% and throw them away so that the vine can concentrate. We sell in 69 different countries along the world. Exports represent 92% of what we produce. Our most important market is the U.S. And then comes the United Kingdom. And then it's in Asia.
Today, people come from all over the world to taste the wines at Montes.
The general perception in the United States is that you have to pay $25 plus to get a decent Pinot Noir. And yet this one sells over there for $14 or $15 and is amazingly successful.
Well, without free trade, Montes would not exist. We couldn't possibly think of operating solely for the local market because it's such a reduced market.
One of the key components in Chile's transition from government command and control to a free market economy was another of Milton Friedman's controversial ideas. Instituted in 1981, Chile's privatized pension system dramatically raised savings. The country now boasts one of the highest savings rates in Latin America. Most workers have 10% of their salary placed in a personal retirement fund, which they own and control. The various funds are private and competitive. One of the first to join a private pension plan was Chilean businessman Alan Mackenzie.
I must admit I was a little tentative to begin with, and some of my friends were even more tentative.
Juan Aristilla was the plan's first supervisor.
The pensions are 70% at least, or more, of the normal earnings of the people who were contributing.
I honestly think it's the best investment I've made in my life. Thank goodness I did, because it's made retirement a lot easier.
Nevertheless, the system is not without its critics. Concerns include high administrative fees and the lack of coverage for the self-employed and low-wage earners.
I don't feel it's fair to blame the pension scheme for what's wrong in economic distribution. I think that has to be solved with other policies.
But even with these problems, there has been progress. Since 1990, the poverty rate has been cut in half.
Milton Friedman's ideas work in practice. They are very attractive to the intellect, but the most important thing is that they are the best system so far proven for a better and greater development of societies and the people within them.
The society that puts equality before freedom will end up with neither. The society that puts freedom before equality will end up with a great measure of both.
In the 1970s, America is experiencing the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. President Gerald Ford gathers the best economic minds in the nation to consider options. The meeting is chaired by Alan Greenspan and includes John Kenneth Galbraith and Milton Friedman.
The U.S. economy is fundamentally strong, but that strength is currently being eroded by the disease of inflation. If that disease is not checked, it will take a heavy toll, including, in my opinion, the very likely destruction of our personal, political, and economic freedom. Any cure would have to be painful indeed to be worse than letting that disease rage unchecked.
By now, the name Milton Friedman is well known in the halls of government.
Joining us live from our San Francisco bureau is the Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman.
And around the kitchen tables and in the living rooms of America.
It's often described as a profit system, but that's a misleading label. It's a profit and loss system.
One of the wonderful things about you is that when you speak, I almost always understand you, and that...
Professor Friedman, your expertise as an economist is, of course, indisputable.
His appearances on national television have made him an unexpected celebrity.
The long-term national security of this country will not be promoted by converting the United States into a protected enclave, protected from foreign competition.
He also appears in print.
And I remember Katharine Graham of the Washington Post asking me to persuade Milton Friedman to be a columnist.
I was a little hesitant to do it. I wrote about 3 or 4 trial columns and tried them out to see whether I could do it.
He resisted. He said he didn't like assignments, and he said he didn't know whether he'd have enough to write about. And I said, Milton, you will never run out of things to write about.
I wrote the column for 17 years, and I think that turned out to be one of the most important factors in enabling me to communicate to the public at large.
He's even the subject of a serious interview in Playboy magazine.
It really surprised me, but they initiated it, and they took it very seriously. And it ended up to be an extremely effective statement of my philosophy.
While his ideas are getting attention in such unusual places, Milton and Rose are about to begin yet another chapter in their life together. By late December 1976, the Friedmans have moved to San Francisco, where Milton has accepted a permanent position as senior fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. They are contacted by the president of the public television station in Erie, Pennsylvania, Bob Chittister, who suggests a wild idea. "3 years in production, free to choose, will illustrate Milton's philosophy in new ways that are easy to understand."
On the other side of the world, in Japan,
like thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil.
This is India today.
He was able to persuade me to get into this project because I feel so strongly that America is at a critical point in its history. For the past 50 years, we have been moving away from the fundamental principles that made this a great country.